Let's not waste time. We got a long time Detroit news columnist and author, friend of the show, Tom Maz's boy, who's not here today. So don't worry, Lynn. You're still in good hands with Braylon. Lynn Henning, how you doing?
Hi, Braylon, and hi, Anson. And yeah, we'll excuse Maz. It's a Friday afternoon after all, and I know rank has its privileges.
It does, and Maz has been with us in this community for a very long time here in Detroit. So he's one of my faves. I love him to death. So whatever he needs to do, he can take care of. The Tigers, this conundrum that we call the Detroit Tigers 2024 season. I mean, every time you want to discount them, here they come. You know, you discount them again before this series. They play the Reds. They play the Twins. The Guardians sweep the Reds, and they almost sweep the Guardians. They beat them 3-1 in the series, and 6-1 in the last 7 games, and we're getting close to deadline. Your Detroit Tigers. Lynn Henning, talk about it.
You know, this season, Braylon, has been absolutely, I think, one of the most upside down I've seen in the sense
Nerve-wracking.
Yeah, and early on they played and pitched so well, but of course they weren't getting any hits. I mean, these 1-0-2-1 games are just nonsense. If they'd had one more bat cooperating, whether it was Torkelson or Parker Meadows or Riley hitting the way that he's now hitting, you'd have flipped a lot of those games early, Braylon,
Yeah.
and you'd be talking contention. But that often is what happens with a team this young. And I think that all along was the peril. I thought, though, frankly, that their young hitters were going to hit a lot better this spring. And that went all the way from Torkelson, of course, down through Colt Keith, down through Meadows. And that didn't work out. I mean, Meadows had to go back to Toledo and then comes back last week and shows really what he can do. And now is out with a hamstring. Torkelson remains everybody's surprise and mystery. And yet you've got Colt Keith, who hung in, and predictably, Braylon and Anson, this kid is going to be a real star for a long time. And you knew by about midseason you'd be seeing from him what we're seeing now. I think the guy that's gotten overlooked is Kerry Carpenter's absence.
Oh,
I mean,
very
people
true.
forget about it. It's been a couple of months. He hasn't been around. Suddenly, sometimes you have to remind folks, Kerry Carpenter isn't in this lineup and hasn't been since May. And so you add that all up, and in some respects, guys, I'm a little bit mystified at how close to 500 they are. I thought they'd win 85 games this year. That might have been a little high, but here they are after this 6 of 7 thing, as you say, Braylon, and they're pushing closer to 500. They could easily have a second half here. That's going to be incumbent on getting a few people healthy and back, but it's within reach, and that's also part of, as you say, a rather erratic season and a rather mystifying season of baseball in Detroit.
100%. And Colton Keith definitely has turned it around this season, and as of late, as it relates to his bat and as well as his play on defense. So he's becoming an everyday player. So that's good to see. The Detroit Tigers, man, we don't want to BS around. We know what's coming up. The trade deadline is coming up. Flaherty was back on the mound yesterday. 6 innings pitched. I want to say 4 strikeouts. It was and looked like the Flaherty that we know. Couple things in there, but still looked pretty good for himself. What's the move? What are the Tigers? Are we buyers? Are we sellers at the trade? Because I'm in that space. I'm getting excited, but I don't want to be the wrong thing. Lynn, tell me what I should be.
Oh, no, Braylon, I think this question has been very obvious for some time now. They're going to trade Jack Flaherty if Jack Flaherty is healthy. There really isn't any choice. This guy is headed for free agency. He is going to get a whopping contract. And people say, well, why don't the Tigers extend him? And the problem with that, guys, is trying to buy a guy out of free agency is just too prohibitively expensive, because they understand that what they're likely to get this autumn probably exceeds anything that they're going to talk about in terms of an extension. And that's just the way it goes. This is a two-way street. This is not about the Tigers saying, well, we'll just extend him. You've got to get all parties in on this. And it's very tough to get a free agent who's ready to perhaps cash in on the casino floor to buy into an extension. J.D. Martinez was that way. He had too much he was likely to make out of market. So anyway, guys, that's what they're looking at. Flaherty, I'm sure, is going to go. I wouldn't rule out other possibilities. Certainly, all along they've had two catchers there, one of which they could deal. The strange part to this strange season, Braylon, as you were citing,
Yeah.
is so many catchers are hitting, backup catchers are hitting great
Man.
this season. So Carson Kelly is kind of lost. I think he's 18th or so, and I mean that's really striking to me. But he's the kind of guy you could deal. They probably can deal Andy Ibanez. I mean, I think that's a strong likelihood. I'm not sure they will trade any of their relievers, but they could. And so I think they have to keep definitely an open mind on this. Now, people might bring up Tarek Skubal. Again, he's
Here we
from the,
go.
why don't they extend him? Well, he's a Scott Boras client, and you're not extending Tarek Skubal, particularly when he could beat Garrett Cole's deal by the time this whole thing is done. So that isn't going to happen. Now, if a team comes to Scott Harris and says, fellas, here's what we're going to give you, because we know Tarek Skubal's our ticket to a World Series.
Yes, he is.
A team that's really on the cusp of doing that, like the Orioles, for instance, they could spin off a lot of great talent and not have it hurt the Orioles and get the ace they need. I don't think Mike Elias, the Orioles GM, is going to do that. Probably not at the deadline anyway. The more likely scenario, if they're going to deal Tarek Skubal for the Brinks truck that the Tigers certainly would insist upon, is more likely around the winter meetings time. But I think you have to ponder that, guys, because what you could get back for a Tarek Skubal, which would include likely a pretty good pitcher as part of the mix, could make that the deal of the century for the Tigers. So you've got to keep open to those things, even if it's not very popular right now.
Yeah, look, I know Anson is chomping at the bit to ask a question, so I'm going to let him ask. But just beforehand, I just want to say, when we get a guy, whatever deals we make for Jack Flaherty, can we please get guys that are ready? Can we know? I don't want prospects for 2 to 3 years out. I want guys that are like Colt Keith was, like Colt Keith is. I need guys like that, or like Colt Keith was last year. Don't give me guys that aren't ready to play. That's just my 2 cents, Lynn.
And the problem, though, Braylon, is that runs into the realities of the market, and you're not going to get all that good of a player. Certainly not a player who's already established big league credentials for Jack Flaherty when he is a rental. And that's what he is, because you're only going to have him for 2.5 months or so. And so, Braylon, you're going to have to rule that one out. I think what they can get, though, for him is definitely worth pondering. And that could be a high single A player talent. I mean a talent, or a low A1. For instance, look what they got for Michael Lorenzen last year.
I'm telling you.
Hao Lee, who's just burning it up at Double A Erie. He's 21 years old. He's a second baseman. See, not many people were excited about that trade then, but a year later, that deal can look like $1 million. And so you've got to keep an eye, I think, on that, Braylon, when you look at the realities of the market and what you can get. That high A or low Double A talent, or rather Double A talent, could really end up being a prize for the Tigers. And that's more, I think, what's within the realm of possible for them.
Understood.
Mr. Henning, always great to have you on the show. I got a couple questions for you here. One, there's only been 5 rookie pitchers to ever start in the All-Star game. One of them, our very own Mark the Bird Fidrich. Can you speak on the phenom that is Paul Skeens?
Yeah, when I was covering the draft a year ago, and it was really fun because you had those terrific talents at the top there. Skeens and Colt Keith and Langford and Dillon out of LSU and all that. I mean, those guys, that was such a bonanza draft. And Skeens was the big question. If he falls to Detroit, should the Tigers take him? And I heard all kinds of squealing and thunder and saw bolts of lightning aimed at me for considering that Skeens might be the guy the Tigers should and could take at number 3 if he were available. Well, the Pirates knew better, got him at that first slot. And we all know what he's doing right now. We haven't seen a rookie pitcher like this really in our lifetime. But when he was throwing 100 and some miles an hour last year, and he had the slider, and he had everything else for an LSU national championship caliber team, he was going to be pretty good, and he's been better than that. So that's really, Anson, something that I think is both astonishing, but in some respects not all that surprising given the talent that we saw a year ago.
Okay. Well, as much as I'd love to talk to you and ask you about Tugboat Wilkinson and the shortstop Jacob Wilson, I'm going to keep it to my last one. We had the legend Gregory Kelser on Tuesday with Braylon and I, and he brought up something that was really interesting, and he said that Braylon would have made a great Spartan.
Here you go.
And Braylon doubled down, saying that the very first full ride scholarship that he got
the first major one.
Was offered by our very own Michigan State.
It was.
Well, you said it. You should know what you said.
It was major.
So how much would you have liked to seen our very own Braylon Edwards in that beautiful green and white?
Oh, I think Braylon would have looked absolutely sterling in green and white. The problem is I know his dad too well, and I knew Stanley's son wasn't going any place but to Ann Arbor, and so that was out of the question. Stanley Edwards is one of my favorite players. I've said it before that I ever covered in my years of covering college football, and I mean that too. And Braylon, your dad is special, but yeah, you weren't going to get out of the U of M corral.
It's funny, Lynn. I really appreciate that. Every time you say that, man, I love you for that. My dad's a very special individual, and I was able to do the things, because of tutelage and having him as a father. But now you got me forgetting what I was going to say. The Michigan State thing. Like, my dad allowed it to happen up until a point. Like, as I got older, I realized that he was probably, like, backdooring and, like, talking to Soup, Eric Campbell, or talking to Lord, or talking to Jim Herman, whoever he could. Like, don't mess this up. Because out near the outside, Michigan State was where I was going. That was the first opportunity that I had. And I said, hey, they don't want to do it. I said, I'll go play with Charles Rogers. I said, I'll play with Jeff Smoker and TJ Duckin. But eventually that offer did come. But I feel like my dad was, like you said, he was puppeteering the whole thing behind the scenes. So I became a Michigan Wolverine, and that's just that. It is what it is.
You didn't hurt yourself there. And you and Lloyd did pretty good together there, Braylon.
Appreciate it. I love that guy, Lloyd. Before we let you out of here, I just want to ask you a couple names. I've been watching the Tigers all season. Like I told you, I've been on this roller coaster ride that I believe all the fans are. And mine isn't because of valleys. Mine's just because of the wins and losses. Wenzel Perez, Matt Vierling, and I want to say Malloy. Those are three players that play for the Tigers right now that I want to ask you about. Wenzel Perez is a guy that he looks like he could be something for this Tigers team for a couple years to come, not just the next two.
Well, Braylon, that's an interesting name that you bring up because Niners for all those years, and he never really stood out. He was an okay guy. He was a second baseman, and then he had that psychological glitch where he couldn't really throw accurately to second base, and they moved him to the outfield. Well, this is what I find, though, to be so revealing about how things can change in 1 year. I went to spring training in March, and I'm talking to some of my contacts from the backfields, and one of them I really, really respect said, boy, he said the guy who's really, really showing, and I mean showing some impressive and dazzling skills is Wenzel Perez. And I thought, wow. But he said, no, the athleticism is transferred to the outfield brilliantly, and he's really popping the ball. And I just filed it away. I didn't expect that it was going to lead to any kind of call-up soon. And sure enough, it did. And he came up and he started hitting, and usually those guys flame out. He hasn't. I mean, he's had a couple of cool streaks like they all have, but he has played with amazing consistency, and he has been the biggest surprise of any of the kids so far. Colt Keith was expected to round into the shape. Malloy is beginning to find it. Okay. And with his power, he could be a lot of help in that batting order as well, particularly as they wait to get, they wait to get Carpenter back and hopefully Torkelson back. I'm not sure that's going to happen. That's another discussion subject for us. But certainly Parker Meadows, after another one of these miserable hamstring things, begins to diminish. But Malloy is an interesting guy for sure. And again, he's young and power. And as we've all seen over this last week, gentlemen, what's really been the ticket that's gotten them to 6 out of 7 games here, it's been the long ball.
Yeah, they've been getting out of the park.
Portions of the season.
Definitely sending the ball out of the park. Hey, Lynn, we would be remiss if we let you get out of here before we talk about the Dodgers. The Dodgers are now coming into town. Shohei Ohtani, that is the best baseball player. Maybe Aaron Judge has something to say about it. Maybe Bryce Harper, but it's Shohei. They're coming into town. It's not about who you play. It's about when you play them. And I think we could be catching the Dodgers at the right time. Tigers are hot. Dodgers struggled against the Phils. What say you about our chances? 3 games starting this weekend.
Oh, I think probably along with you gents, if they could get 1 out of these 3, avoid a sweep against a team that good, I think you've probably done okay. If they get to 2, then that tells you that their second half can be pretty special based on what we've seen the last week. I know a friend I respect very much said after the Cincy series, this is going to be one awful 7 days. Well, now we're 3 out of 4 against Cleveland and heading into this Dodgers series, as you say, Braylon. But I would think, and I'm going to be a realist here, I think 1 out of 3 would be really great. Avoid the sweep and take some momentum here into the All-Star break. And they could be interesting here in the second half, to say the least.
Well, you heard it from our friend Lynn Henning, author. He says it could be interesting if you get 1 of 3 and take that information into the All-Star break. We appreciate you as always. Tom's not here, but I hope I did a decent job in his stead.
Braylon, you were flawless. Send Maz my best, and Anson, good talking with you too. Appreciate it, guys.
I used to respect you because I called you were not a liar, but now I know that you're a liar. I wasn't flawless. Lynn, I appreciate you. and I got to come to Green Acres soon, man. I know it's right around the corner. It's for sure. I'll catch you next time, Lynn.
All right, Braylon. Thanks.
I appreciate it.
Take care.